Hey guys, James Nation here with Technic Nation, and want to spend a couple of quick minutes to give you guys my take on the iPhone 10 after 3 months of ownership. Tell you what I like, what I don't like. All right, so when the iPhone 10 first came out, I'll be the first to admit that I was really excited about the phone. And when I found out that I was going to be getting one on day one, I was really excited, even more excited. Unfortunately, after 3 months of ownership, that excitement has kind of fallen to the wayside. And I feel like while the phone is certainly not a bad phone, it just doesn't come anywhere close to living up to the hype of what the iPhone 10 should have been. So, I'm going to share with you guys things that I liked, but more going to spend more time talking about things I didn't like. And my first dislike is the Face ID. I have a couple of issues with it. Number one is personally, I don't think it is anywhere near as effective as Touch ID. There are several times throughout the day when I try to unlock my phone and it tells me, it basically just stares at me and gives me this blank look and makes me enter in my passcode. So, I've read up on the proper positioning and this and that, and I know you've got to have your eyes open and looking at the front camera, but again, it's not great. It's not that it fails often. It's the fact that it fails as much as it does, because when I had the iPhones or any of my iPhones in the past that were Touch ID, I think were much more effective and they were even faster than Face ID. Another issue I have with it is if you are using your phone for navigation in your car, which a lot of people do, then there's a pretty good chance that you have your phone on a mount of some sort, either on your dash or on your window, whatever the case may be. And if that's how you're using your phone, then let me tell you, you're going to have a hard time unlocking the phone anytime it goes into standby mode. Now, with Touch ID, of course, it was pretty simple. You reach one hand up, put your thumb or your finger on it, you're good to go. With the Face ID, you've got to position your face in a way that it's not too far, not too close, and it can't be too side to side. And when you're driving, that's asking a lot of someone to take their eyes off the road long enough to make eye contact with the phone so that it will recognize their face and allow it to be unlocked. So that's a big drawback to me, and maybe it's not something that Apple took into account, or maybe they just figured it wouldn't be an issue for many people, but whatever the case may be, I'm not a fan of it for that reason. Third thing that I despise about Face ID is I can guarantee you 100% of the time that it will fail for me under one circumstance, and that is first thing in the morning. So when I wake up, as most people do, I reach for the phone to see if I had any notifications come in through the night, of course, or even just to check the time. But everyone reaches for the phone first thing in the morning. And without fail, this thing will not recognize my face in the morning. And I admit, I look a little rough in the morning. Most of us probably do. But it amazes me that the iPhone 10 cannot recognize my face in the morning. And I've tried everything. I've tried waking up and immediately smiling while I'm looking at the camera. I've tried holding my eyes open big in case they were kind of, tired looking or whatever. No matter what I do, it doesn't work. In the morning, first thing, it's not going to work, and I'm going to have to enter my passcode. So that's a big inconvenience for me. So big X for Apple on that one. All right, so next on my list of dislikes is the screen. We're going to talk about three things real quick. First, the notch. Now, I'll admit the notch hasn't been as much of a hindrance as I kind of thought it could be or would be. There are a few times here and there when certain apps that notch is a little more of an irritant in the way, but for the most part, the notch isn't a big deal, so I'm cool with that. What I don't like is the screen size. And I knew going in that in spite of the fact that this is a 5.8 inch screen versus the 8 Plus, which is a 5.5 inch, in spite of the fact that it's technically larger diagonally, surface area, it's actually smaller than the 8 Plus. I knew that going in. I didn't think it would be a big deal, but every time I look at my wife's iPhone 7 Plus, I get a little bit of screen envy. It's not a small screen by any means compared to phones from 3 or 4 years ago, but it just, for some reason, it rubs me the wrong way that this screen is on a surface area basis smaller than the phone that is beneath it, the 8 Plus. So not cool on that one. The other thing I don't like is the OLED screen hasn't been as awe-inspiring as I expected it to be. Apple made a big deal about the fact that this was the first iPhone to use the OLED technology. I think I'm saying that right. But, it was going to be 25% brighter, and the contrast ratio was going to be just astronomically high compared to the 8 Plus. It's not that big of a difference. The biggest disappointment to me has been the brightness. One thing I've always hated in my iPhones is how difficult they can be to see during the day. And that's probably not just an iPhone thing. That's probably most any cell phone these days. But when Apple talked about how it's going to be 25% brighter, I thought, okay, finally, I'm going to have I'm going to have a phone that I can see in the daytime. And after 3 months, I've got to say that 25%, if it's there, it's not noticeable. Maybe I'm expecting too much. I don't know. But regardless, for those reasons, the screen has been a disappointment for me. All right, next on my list of dislikes would be the cameras. And let me start this by saying the cameras themselves are not a disappointment. The 2 rear cameras are amazing. They take as good a picture, I think, as any cell phone out there. You can view plenty of comparison videos with the iPhone 10, the Galaxy S8, or the LG V30, or whatever it is they have, and the Google Pixel 2. I mean, every company's a little different. But I've got to say, I have not been disappointed with the actual cameras. What I've been disappointed with is the fact that I could have had the same thing in the iPhone 8 Plus for 99% of the time. So the differences, in case you weren't aware, between the iPhone 10 and the 8 Plus is, number one, the telephoto lens on the back on the iPhone 10 has the optical image stabilization. On the 8 Plus, you don't get that. And then, of course, on the front camera, you have the portrait mode, which the 8 Plus doesn't have the portrait mode on the front-facing camera. And that's it. Otherwise, they are the same cameras. Again, they're great cameras, but if I'm paying a couple $100 more for the latest and greatest iPhone, I feel like I deserve a little bit more than that. So while I like the cameras, they take good pictures. On a comparison basis between this and the 8 Plus, it's been a disappointment. All right, so my next dislike for this phone has been the fact that the call quality is worse than I had with my iPhone 6S. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I don't spend a lot of time on the phone. There are certain people that I call fairly often, though, family members, more than anything else. But the one complaint that they have shared with me has been that as soon as I flipped over to the iPhone 10, the call quality dropped. So it's more cutting out. It's less clear. I didn't change carriers. I've been with AT&T for over a decade. I haven't changed where I use my phone. It's either at the home or on the same route between home and work or at work. So carrier hasn't changed. Location hasn't changed. The iPhone changed and it's gone down. So it amazes me that the latest and greatest iPhone is somehow less qualified to make a phone call than the phone I had that was 2 or 3 years old. So, not cool. So, my final gripe with the iPhone 10 is the fact that I paid $200 more for this than I did the 8 Plus. That's a 25% increase in what I would have paid for the 8 Plus. And I didn't get 25% more phone with the iPhone 10. It burns me every time I think about it. There are some upgrades when you move to this phone, and we've talked about a lot of them. The OLED screen, the optical image stabilization in the back camera, the Face ID, and the portrait selfie. None of it has been worth $200, and I've actually lost some things. I've lost call quality. Battery life on the iPhone 10 is rated to be worse than you get in the 8 Plus. So I've paid $200 for a phone that really just doesn't do as much as I feel like it should. You could probably make the case that I'm not using the phone to its advantage. Maybe that's my fault. The fact that I'm not taking portrait selfies enough, or I'm not using Animoji enough. Fine. If you're the type of person that's going to use that feature a lot, then maybe it is worth the $200. But for me, other than kind of a show and tell type scenario, I've taken less than 5 portrait selfies, and I've sent 2 or 3 Animojis, and it was funny in the beginning, but it quickly faded, and then I was left with a phone that was not much better than an 8 Plus, but it cost me $200 more. So those are my thoughts on the iPhone 10 after 3 months of ownership. If you have an iPhone 10 and you're not happy with it, feel free to share with me kind of what your thoughts are, what your complaints are. If you have the 10 and you love it, then maybe there's something I'm not seeing with the phone. Feel free to drop a comment and let me know what your thoughts are. But otherwise, I just thought I'd take a few minutes to kind of share with you guys what I thought about the phone. So if you're in the market for a new Apple phone and you're torn between the 8 Plus and the iPhone 10, do yourself a favor, go with the 8 Plus.